Hello, everybody. What's going on? What's happening? This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. Today's video, I am going to be talking about Septima Clark. Septima Clark, who was an educator, an activist from South Carolina, from beautiful South Carolina. Okay, and she has been known for her tremendous work, working alongside with Rosa Parks, Dr. Martin Luther King, just to name a few. However, she has not received her credit, her due, like Rosa Parks and Dr. King did. So, for Women's History Month, I want to honor her and recognize her for the work that she has done. And also, happy International Women's Day. So, shout out to all the women out there that has done a great thing, great deed for everybody, especially the black women in our community, because black women, we get underrepresented so much and we don't receive a lot of credit. And a lot of times that you hear things about black women, it's always something associated to negative things. Not saying that those things do not happen, but it's always something negative. You don't hear as much positivity about black women. So I want to be able to give credit to black women doing things positive and constructive and doing things that's beneficial to the community as well. All right. So, anyways, before I get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, share the channel, and all that great stuff, okay? So let's go ahead and get to the information. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the source from Wikipedia, but also I want to give book recommendation, and also I want to show you guys the website where you can go and find information, okay? So, anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Uh, so let me go to the encyclopedia first. All right. So right here, this is Septima. This is South Carolina Encyclopedia.org, and basically every state, almost every state, have their own encyclopedia website where you can go and find out information. It's very resourceful. So this information right here deals with Septima Clark. So Septima Ponzette Clark. All right. Okay, so now she is credited with the creation in 1957 of Citizenship School model, which ultimately engaged thousands of ordinary people in literacy and political education throughout the South. All right, so it said that she was born on May the 3rd, 1898 in Charleston, the second of 8 children, born to the former slave Peter Ponzette and his freeborn wife Victoria Anderson. Clark's mother spent part of her early childhood in Haiti, which gave her a unique look at racism in the United States. The gentle and nonviolent composure of Peter Posset gave Septima the balance needed to withstand the difficulties she would later face as a human rights advocate. All right. So she attended to Avery Institute, completing the teacher training program in 1916. Her parents sacrificed to pay the private school tuition because of its reputation for academic excellence. The licence of instruction allowed her to teach at Promised Land School, an overcrowded and underfunded rural school for African Americans on St. John's Island. State law prohibited African Americans from teaching at Charleston Public School. After 3 years on the island, Clark was well versed in the economic, health, and educational deficiencies facing most Southern Black communities. So in 1919, she took a teaching position at Avery, where she joined the artist Edwin Harleston and former Congressman Thomas E. Miller in petitioning the state legislature to permit Black employment in Charleston's public school. Their campaign succeeded the following year, which motivated Clark to further challenge the racial status quo in South Carolina. In May of 1920, she married Nery Clark. Her first child, a daughter, died shortly after birth, but her son, Nery Jr., was a focal point of her life, especially after her husband's untimely death from kidney failure in 1925. So a series of moves to Hickory, North Carolina, Dayton, Ohio, and back to Johns Island culminated with Septima Clark accepting a third grade teaching position in Columbia. Her exposure to professional and civic organization of the city, some of which were integrated, fortified her resolve to bring change to her state. In both Columbia and Charleston, where she returned in 1947, Clark was an active member of the Methodist Church, the Teacher Association of South Carolina, the Black local affiliate of the Young Women Christian Association, the Federate Women Club of South Carolina, and the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. Among her fellow activists were the businesswoman Majeska Monative Simpkins, Booker T. Washington High School principal J. Andrew Simmons, the political organizer John McCrae, and NAACP attorney Harold Boulware. So, as you can see, during that time in South Carolina, in Charleston, black people could not teach in the public school system. So they was teaching on the islands or in the rural town area. Okay. So that's what she was able to do. So it was she did not get that opportunity, but she put up the petition for blacks to be able to teach in the public school system. All right. And speaking of NAACP, I want to say this. I'm highly disappointed in NAACP with a lot of things, especially with Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, son, not daughter, son. I'm disappointed in that. So y'all can give an award for this little boy being a transgender girl, but you can't award people who are actually doing the work in the community, who's trying to make the difference. That's the problem. That's a big problem to me. A child getting an award for being a transgender, that's very problematic. It doesn't sit well with me, but you know, you know how it goes. You know, that's their liberal concept. Okay, that's their liberal concept, and it's problematic. It's very problematic. All right, so anyways, it said back in Charleston, Clark acquired a radical reputation for insisting on choosing her own friends, both black and white, from whom she learned a great deal about the political process. So Clark's dismissal from Charleston County school system in 1956 after she and two other teachers refused to disavow membership in the NAACP was partially attributed to her public friendship with the controversial Judge J. Waties Warren and his wife. After nearly 40 years in the state schools, Clark was without a job and she was denied her small but hard earned pension until 1976 when annual payments were finally reinstated. So then it goes on to say in 1953, Clark visited the Highlander Folk School in Monteagle, Tennessee, where she became well versed in the interracial community organizing work of the school. Clark became director of workshops and recruited South Carolinians such as Esau Jenkins, Mary Lee Davis, Herbert Fielding, and her cousin Bernice Robinson. Clark is credited with the creation in 1957 of the citizenship school model, which ultimately engaged thousands of ordinary in literacy and political education throughout the South. The program was adopted by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and Martin Luther King Jr. by the early 1960s. Clark earned a reputation as mother conscious to hundreds of youth workers and community organizers. So in 1975, Clark was elected to the Charleston School Board. She received an honorary doctorate of humane letters from the College of Charleston in 1979 and received a Living Legacy Award from President Jimmy Carter in 1979. South Carolina's highest award, the Order of the Palmetto, was given to her in 1982. Septima Posette Clark died on Johns Island on December 15, 1987, and was buried at her beloved Old Bethel United Methodist Church. All right. So that is that information about Septima Clark according to South Carolina Encyclopedia. Now, What does Wikisource say about her? Okay, so here's some sources from Wikipedia. All right, so let's go down because I seen something. All right, so down here it says Clark recalls the gross discrepancy that existed between her school and the white school across the street. Clark's school had 132 students and only one other teacher. As the teaching principal, Clark made $35 per week while the other teachers made $25. Okay. Meanwhile, the white school across the street had only three students, and the teacher who worked there received $85 per week. It was her firsthand experience with these inequalities that led Clark to become an active proponent for pay equalization for teachers. So, in 1919, her pay equalization work brought her into the movement for civil rights. In an interview with Robert Penn Warren for the book Who Speaks for the Negro, Clark explained how these experiences with her education, as well as her early experiences with growing up in a racist Charleston and teaching in the slums, prompt her to want to work towards civil rights. All right, so I seen something else on here. Hmm. All right, so there's something on here that there's mentioned that she did not receive her credit or she was underappreciated by the males uh in the civil rights movement. All right, but hmm. Anyways, okay, so let's go down to where it talks about the NAACP involvement, right? So she first heard of the NAACP for the advancement of colored people while she was teaching on Johns Island from 1916 to 1919. There was no NAACP chapter on Johns Island, but a meeting was held in various preachers came and spoke about what the NAACP was and what exactly it was trying to do. The superintendent was in attendance to collect dues, and it was then that she decided to join the organization. Okay. So she returned to Charleston in 1918 to teach at the sixth grade Normal Institute and private academy for black children. Okay. So she joined the local NAACP and was guided by the branch president Edmund Austin in her early political days. Right? So, despite the order of her principal, Clark led her students around the city, going door to door asking for signature on a petition to allow black principal at Avery. She got 10,000 signatures in a day, and in 1920, black teachers were permitted. In 1920, Clark enjoyed the first of many legal victories when blacks were given the right to become principal in Charleston Public School. Okay, under the Education Board of Aldermen of Charleston. Or in 1945, Clark worked with Thurgood Marshall on a case that was about equal pay for white and black teachers led by NAACP in Columbia, South Carolina. In the late 1940s, proved to be a difficult time for Clark as she stood up for the NAACP aim of equalization to integration against many other members and activists. All right. All right, so and it goes on to talk about Columbia University and NAACP leadership. So during the summer, Clark begins at Columbia University in New York and at Atlanta University in Georgia with the landmark figure in the racial equality movement, W.E.B. Du Bois. Between 1942 and 1945, she received a bachelor's degree from Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and a master's degree from Hampton Institute, which is now Hampton University. While earning her BA, she was taking classes in the morning, teaching from noon to 5 in the afternoons, and taking more classes in the evening. She was earning 62.50 per month in college, and every summer she traveled to Maine to earn more money. The NAACP in Columbia, South Carolina had approximately 800 members, and all were black. The biggest NAACP impact during Clark's time in Columbia was they sponsored a suit that won the equalization of teacher salary. It was a huge win for the NAACP. So it says in 1947, Clark returned to Charleston to take care of her mother, who had a stroke. While caring for her mother, Clark's role as an educator and activist did not subside. During this time, she taught in Charleston Public Schools. She was active with the YWCA and served as a membership chairperson of the Charleston NAACP. The YWCA was one of the few organizations in Charleston that was interracial. There were black and white branches. In 1956, Clark obtained the position of vice president of the Charleston NAACP branch. So that same year, South Carolina legislature passed a law banning city or state employees from being involved with civil rights organization. Clark believed that a combination of relations such as a social and power relation were a major contributor to schooling. Clark was upfront in her refusal to leave the NAACP and was thus fired from her job by the Charleston City School Board, losing her pension after 40 years employment. She soon found that no school in Charleston would hire her. A black teacher sorority held a fundraiser for her benefit, but no member would have their picture taken with her, fearing that they would lose their own jobs. All right. Okay, so it goes on to talk about her work with Rosa Parks and Ella Baker. So down here, right? It says in 1965, Clark estimated that these citizenship schools had reached more than 25,000 and led to around twice that number of registered voters. Additionally, many of the students became teachers themselves, right? Okay. So her and her cousin Bernice Robinson expanded and spread the program. They taught students how to fill out driver license exam, voter registration forms, Sears mail order forms, and how to sign checks. Okay. Clark also served as Highlander's director of workshop recruiting teachers and students. One of the participants in her workshop was Rosa Parks. A few months after participating in the workshop, Parks helped to start the Montgomery bus boycott. Many other women who took part in Montgomery bus boycott also attended Highlander and participated in Clark's workshop. Upon seeing the success of Clark, Ella Baker traveled to Highlander as a representative of SCLC and observed to see if Clark's program could be incorporated into SCLC Crusade for Citizenship. All right. So it goes on to talk about the citizenship schools. Okay. And the whole agenda with that was basically to teach people how to read, how to write, and how to really get involved in political activities, things of that nature. So her main important goal was to get the literacy rate up with the African Americans because Many black people in her area, they didn't really know how to read or write. So she wanted to make sure that it was important for them to really know these basics, these fundamentals. Okay. So right here, let me go ahead and read this real fast to you. The spread of citizenship school. Clark is most famous for establishing the citizenship school, teaching reading to adults throughout the Deep South in hopes of carrying on a tradition. The creation of citizenship schools developed from Septima's Clark teaching of adult literacy course throughout the interwar years. While the project served to increase literacy, it also served as a means to empower black communities. Her teaching approach was very specific in making sure her students felt invested in what they were learning. She connected the politics of movement to the personal experiences and need of the people. In this way, Clark's strategy aligned with Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy. Okay, so she not only teach literacy but also teach citizenship rights. Clark goal for the school were to provide self pride, cultural pride, literacy, and a sense of one's citizenship rights. She was recruiting the rural community to get involved with the movement. Citizenship school were frequently taught in the back room of a shop so as to elude the violence of racist whites. Okay. All right. So here is that information. Okay. Okay. Here it is. Here's what I was looking for. So down here it says Clark was the first woman to gain a position on SCLC board. Andrew Young, who had joined Highlander the previous year to work with the citizenship school, also joined the SCLC staff. The SCLC staff of citizenship school were mainly women as a result of the daily experience gained by becoming a teacher. So Clark would struggle against sexism during her time on the SCLC, as had Ella Baker, with the bulk of sexism emanating from Martin Luther King Jr., Ralph Abernathy also objected to her, as Clark said. I can remember Reverend Abernathy asking many times why was Septima Clark on the executive board of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And Dr. King would always say she was the one who proposed this citizenship education, which is bringing to us not only money, but a lot of people who will register and vote. And he asked that many times, it was hard for him to see a woman on that executive body. So Clark claimed that women being treated unequally was one of the greatest weaknesses of the civil rights movement. All right. So let's talk about that. Now here you have Septima Clark, who was very prominent and active in the civil rights movement, also expressing that there was discrimination and sexism against women. As also Elaine Brown and Kathleen Cleaver and Erica Huggins, they also expressed that there was some form of sexism taking place against women. So these are the women who given their accounts of being a part of a movement where they trying to focus on liberating black people, but they have a battle within the organization they dealing with as well. So it's pretty tough when you're dealing with a male dominated organization, because you got to figure out how do you get your foot in, where do you belong, and especially if you're a woman gaining leadership and power, right? If you're in a position of power or leadership, that becomes a problem, because most men feel like they should be the one that's being empowered. They should be the ones that doing all the leading and the women just follow. That's what they feel like. But it's not always the case. Okay? It's not always the case. That's why when you look into the school system, right, who you see do most of the teaching? Women. You have more women teaching than you have male teachers, right? Because who's the primary teacher of a child? Women. So when it comes to a child, the woman is the one that's spending majority of the time with them. So she spends majority of the time with children, and those children are going to follow her lead more than they will follow the man lead because he may not be there majority of the time. But getting back to the point, it's like, how do you organize an organization that's sitting around bringing liberation to black people if you cannot coexist with the opposite sex? But this is what happened when you live under patriarchal white supremacy. You carry on the mentality. And to this day, we still deal with patriarchal white supremacy. Yes, they may give women more rights, whatever. But guess what? Well, I wouldn't even call them rights. I would say privilege or leverage, rather. They give women more leverage. But guess what? Those privilege or those rights can be taken away at the same time. So those rights did not come because women automatically giving themselves those rights. They had to put up a fight to get those rights to be recognized by men. So these men giving women these rights can also take the rights away from them. Again, people like Kamala Harris would not be in a position if it wasn't for men. Yeah, the women done put up the fight, but it was the men that made the decision that she will become vice president. And if it wasn't for those men that made the decision of her becoming vice president, she would have never got that position. And that's honesty. That's all honesty and truth. And that's something that we have to look at as a people. We have to understand that we cannot overlook the concept of sexism because we want to make it up in our mind that it does not exist. Then you're lying to yourself. And I hate to say this, but subconsciously speaking, a lot of men carry on the sexism, carry on the misogynist mentality. They do. Even if they claim to be fair and claim to be right or whatever, they still carry on the sexist and misogynist mentality. This is why I get very skeptical as a woman. I'm very skeptical of the men who represent the left part of the party, right? If they left wing, whatever, or if they so-called liberals. I become very skeptical because the first question that comes to my mind is, will he switch up? When they say they for women's right, now there are those who are sincerely that will support the rights of women, that will make sure women are protected or whatnot. But then there are those who are good at talking. They use a good talking point to just take advantage of women. And those are what you call the simps. Those simps can talk a good game just to get what they want out of the women. And then those same guys will switch up when they don't feel like it's benefiting them. They'll switch up. But I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not going to be on here for very long. Anyways, I hope you all have a good one. I hope you all enjoyed that video. Oh, and I also want to recommend this book for y'all before I go. So here's this book by Septima herself. It's her autobiography. Also, she did a collaboration with a lady named Cynthia Stokes Brown. It's called Ready from Within, Septima Clark and the Civil Rights Movement. All right. This is a picture of her. Okay, so if you guys want to, you can go on archive.org. Archive.org is an online library website. So you can check out books for like an hour or you can check them out for 2 weeks. Okay, it's an online library website. So archive.org. So again, I'll post the title of the book. All right. And that's it. And I hope you all have a good one. So until next time, y'all take it easy. And I'll make sure that I'll come back with some more topics. So peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany. All right, be safe.